Good sticks, everyone. Welcome to the Captain Avalanche Fancast, your unofficial source for all things Colorado Avalanche hockey and more from a fan perspective. Hosted by me, Captain Avalanche Corey, and one game, one mission, Dom. Now, we're no insiders. We're not inside the locker room face-to-face with our favorite players, but we hope to create a relatable and welcoming environment because we're just like all of you listening. Fans with a deep passion for the game of hockey, and in this case, the Colorado Avalanche. I'm not happy, Dom. I'm upset. Pain. What?
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Of the three games that I get to talk about this episode, first of all, it's remarkable to me. That tells you how much hockey the Avalanche are playing right now. Because we recorded on Monday. Or no, Sunday? Sunday. We recorded on Sunday. And from that point, I have three games to talk about. You just have one. That just tells you how much hockey the Avalanche are playing. And I want to meet with whoever the bright-ass motherfucker who thought, the Avalanche should not only play 3 games in 4 days, but 3 games against divisional opponents, one of those being a back-to-back, and 2 of those games being against teams that are ahead of them in the standings. That seems like a great plan.
Quick question. Didn't the Avs actually play back on Saturday, not Sunday, since you saved the Canadiens game for today's analysis?
We did. They played Saturday, Monday, and then obviously today. So they've played every other day, for like the last 2 weeks now. And then they play a back-to-back, and then they play again on Saturday. So it's Chicago. Yeah, it's Chicago tonight, Minnesota tomorrow, and then the Jets on Saturday. Talk about an unbelievably brutal stretch. And spoiler alert, you need all the points you need since they are all divisional games and they dropped the first one against what should be a guaranteed win. Now, always any given night, we'll talk about it more, but oh man, it is just, I want to throw up right now. And it just happened. So the emotional strain of the matter is just nice and high. But Dom, you deserve the spotlight right now because we're getting back on track with our regularly scheduled programming. And with that, you have only one game to analyze, but it is a game against your most hated rival at this current moment in time. So, Dom, why don't you tell us about how much you hate them? It's time for In the Tank with Dom.
Well, thank you, Captain. I don't know if I can put into words my dislike for the Vegas Golden Knights franchise, and more so the fact that they've had success in a fraction of the time that the Sharks have been in the league, who have not yet hoisted the cup. So that just puts salt in the wound any time we seem to cross paths with Vegas. And anytime we seem to cross paths with Vegas, they either beat the crap out of us physically or beat the crap out of us on the scoreboard, it seems like. They're just a brutal team to play against, very physical, very cold-hearted as a franchise as well. That's part of their success, is they've been going through players like nobody's business and just paying for success as it comes, and then trading guys away for almost nothing. So it's quite the unorthodox and very what's the word for it? I don't know. Cutthroat, harsh place to be playing, and they take that out on their opponents. I mean, obviously this goes back to Pavelski taking a cross-check to the face, and that's what really kicked it off for us, and we look at them as a rival. However, just like this game, Vegas does typically win against the Sharks. They win it more than 2 to 1 currently on the percentages when they meet. So as much as I consider them a rival and I very much dislike their franchise, they do have the better end of that rivalry since entering the league. And that makes me unhappy, Corey. Quick side note, going back to what you were saying before, I think it is odd how the league schedule is sometimes. It does feel very unbalanced. I feel like the Sharks had that heavy road trip last month as well, and that's what got them to a league-leading 43 games played. So at some point here in the season, that's when you'll have a bit of a lull. But yeah, it's so crazy how teams can be in drastically different places, and you wonder if how even that makes the playing field. It would almost be better if everyone was playing with a little bit more regularity, the same every 2 to 3 days, consistently through the season.
And I mean, excuse me, I'm munching on my salad. I understand why it's tough to do, because as a schedule maker, you have to not only contend with your own league, but you have to contend with the NBA that often shares the arenas with different NHL franchises. And of course, those arenas also host events and concerts. So I understand that there is a lot that likely goes into making those. But I completely agree with what you're saying, where, you'll have teams with these insanely long road trips, or, it felt like every time I would look at Dallas's or Winnipeg's schedule, they would just be playing, oh, they're playing Columbus tonight. Oh, they're playing the Ducks next time, or then they're playing the Sharks. And it's like, why the fuck are they playing like all of the bottom feeder teams like back to back to back? Like, you'd like them to throw in maybe at least a middling team in there, if not one of the fucking playoff contenders. But it just seems like you're either playing the basement at any given time, or you're playing, the contenders at any given time, just back to back. Feels like there's no happy middle ground.
And that's a fair point, and maybe it just has to do with where the contenders and the not so much are located, and it happens to be regional. When you play the Sharks, you typically play the Ducks either on a back-to-back or in the same week, and both of those teams are bottom feeders, so maybe that has an impact on it as well, with some geography based on where teams are good right now and where they aren't. Florida being a state that has currently had a lot of good teams, a lot of success between Tampa and Florida as two teams there. That makes it harder whenever you make your road trip to Florida, because I would assume, typically play both teams while you're in the area to be efficient with your air mileage. Just makes sense. I would think if it's possible from a scheduling perspective, you'd try to encourage that or have that happen as much as possible.
And I mean, that's a fair point. And I mean, let's look at some teams like Minnesota. You're right. So tomorrow we have to go, and all these games are away, by the way, which is shit. I feel like if you have to play side note, if you have to play a back-to-back, you should get the luxury of being at home. You know
Agreed.
what I mean? Like, if you're going to be forced to play 2 days in a row where the other teams aren't, you should have the luxury of like, okay, we're at least in our home arena. We can go home and sleep after. We don't have to fly anywhere. But no, the Avalanche, after an incredibly frustrating loss to Chicago, get to go hop on the plane, fly to, Minnesota tonight, and get ready for puck drop at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Puck drop was at 5:30 tonight. So barely 24 hours between puck drops, let alone game endings. But
yeah, that's pretty bad.
My original thought on the matter was, look at Minnesota. Last year, you wouldn't have called them anywhere close to a contender, let alone even maybe a playoff team. I mean, they missed last year. And yet now all of a sudden, they're one of the scariest teams to go up against in the league. So I guess you just never know. You can look at the schedule in advance and you're like, okay, well, this team was good last year. And from the start of the year, you only have the prior year for reference. So until you actually get into the season, you don't fully know who's going to be the problems on your schedule until you actually get going.
That's a good point too, and it really shows the parity of the league and how much it can evolve and at times, but then you still always end up with those basement dwellers and those playoff caliber teams, those contenders, and then a few teams in the middle, but it typically does get split into two categories. And I guess that's partly a factor of half the league makes it to the playoffs right now. 16 teams make it, 16 teams don't. So it really does create a natural divide between the two. I guess obviously there could be some extra teams that are in that playoff race, but at the end of the day, half make it, half don't, and that creates that natural parity. Anywho, though, I would love to continue the discussion, and particularly will come up later about NBA and NHL sharing arenas, but I'm going to actually get back to talking about Vegas. And I don't like the Golden Knights. I don't like them at all. I don't. It was 4-2 in this loss. However, Georgiev, believe it or not, did not allow all 4 goals in this game. And so it's actually possible for him to concede 3 or less goals. Like, I didn't know that. Of course, he did allow Mark Stone to score off his glove to open the game, scoring in the first period. To be fair, Stone did beat CC one-on-one to get the puck right around the offensive blue line and then just outraced him to the net. So it's not like Georgiev's fault that Stone got in 1-on-0, but you have that feeling of like, oh, if it hit your glove, you should have gotten it type of type of feeling you're that close.
Let me tell you, bro, we lived it. We lived it for 20 games. I know. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, because still, this was actually, and I'll talk about it more later, but this was actually a strong performance from Georgiev, the best I've seen really from him as a Shark, I think, or up there with it, like overall what he had to face. But getting back into the first period, there to add salt to the wound, Zach Whitecloud scored just about a minute and a half later, maybe slightly less, to double Vegas's lead. This one was off of a turnover again, this time from young defenseman Shakir Mukhamadullin at the Sharks' own blue line. So again, the turnovers are really what cost the Sharks here in the first period. And so while I think Georgiev still should have had these saves and should not have been giving up 2 goals in the first period, especially not separated by such a small bit of time, it was the Sharks' mistakes and their turnovers that really created those opportunities. So I can't put the full weight on him, if that makes sense.
And I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, as much shit as we give Georgiev, which a lot of it is warranted as a player, but I mean, it starts with the guys in front of the goaltender, right? Your goaltender is your last line of defense, but it has to get through everybody else before it gets to him. So yes, responsibility falls on the goaltender to make the save, but the responsibility falls on the rest of the guys on the ice to make sure he doesn't even have to make that save.
And that's a very good point. Yeah, turnovers have been a consistent problem all year for the Sharks. I've talked about some of their defensive woes. Naturally, their penalties we talked about early in the season. So it really is the mistakes in front of the goaltender that make the whole team pay on the scoreboard. Obviously, the goaltender is the last man who gets beat. He's the one that everyone remembers, of course. But it is a good point that you're making there, that it does take a whole team, and it shouldn't get to the goalie in the first place. I mentioned how Mark Stone had a rush. There were multiple 1-on-0 rushes in this game. Of course, not all of them were converted, and unfortunately, Barclay Goodrow had a rush of his own later in the first period, but was unable to beat Samsonov, who was starting this game for Vegas. Overall, it was not the worst first period I've seen from the Sharks this season, but Vegas made them pay on the scoreboard for their mistakes. Those turnovers, they made them pay. They were very costly turnovers. The Sharks' lone penalty in this game, it was not in the first period, so that's in a later period, but Vegas went 1-for-1 on their power play in this game. So the Sharks' defense, the Sharks' errors, the mental errors when you think about a penalty, those type of things, Vegas made them pay for every single one of them. So that's the difference between a playoff caliber team and not. When the opportunities are there in front of you, you got to convert on them. You got to score goals. That's how you win games. And Vegas was able to do that, and the Sharks were not, as again exemplified by Barclay Goodrow not being able to convert on a similar, if not better, opportunity than what Mark Stone had. But as we move on to the second period, it was William Eklund who actually opened the scoring for the Sharks. He scored a power play goal at the 10-minute mark of the period to give the Sharks some life. It was actually good effort on that power play. The Sharks power play was actually better all game, I would like to say. It was along the left wing. They were able to recover the puck, set it up at the point a little bit, get some passing down to Draisaitl's office, and it was a quick one-touch pass from Colin Graff to the slot where Eklund was able to rip it to the far side past Samsonov with a really clear line of sight. So it was just good passing, not too much passing, not the overall perimeter passing, but getting it deep and then getting it to the middle. So was very happy to see that from the Sharks, and very happy to see Eklund getting on the board again and getting a goal, because I've said it so many times, but I really think he's underrated and is someone who I would love to see get to double-digit goals here this season. So that is something I'm looking forward to, and I hope he gets to. So we're hoping to see him score some more goals here in the future. I'm looking it up now just to get the exact stat of how many goals he's at currently. He's already at 8 goals with 30 points in 38 games, so not anything absolutely mind-blowing, but very good, very consistent. That's a strong season.
Did you say he's had 38 points in 38 games?
No, 30 points in 38 games.
Because I was about to say, I was like, Dom, that's a point per game. What do you mean that's not anything amazing? That's incredible. What? Okay, no, we're good.
Yeah, so it's solid. It is great. It is not
a little less than a
point per game. Yeah, so it's still. Yeah, he's got 22 assists. He's an Apple machine. as you might say. He's actually has 2 more points than Celebrini. Of course, he's played 7 more games, but still. So just a couple little fun facts for you there.
I am surprised though, because I feel like early on in the season, I heard you talking about him a lot whenever high scoring chances happen for the Sharks. So I thought he would have already eclipsed 10 by now, but I feel like at this pace, he definitely will.
Yeah, and so he should eclipse it. And remember, he has played 38 games, so he has missed 5 games to injury. So he has been out for a couple brief instances, a couple like 3-game stints or 3-2. So he has had some health issues, I think, that's impacted, and also I think he is. If you think of Celebrini and Smith playing together, or Celebrini Toffoli and Zetterlund, or Celebrini Granlund, like all these combos, I feel like Will Smith is getting whoever is left over. Like, I think Coach Warsofsky, and it's not his fault. He's trying to come up with the best top line combo possible, and they've been experimenting with so many line combinations this season. So it's not. I don't think it's an intentionally bad thing. I just think when trying to build a top line, you're naturally going to look at Granlund, who was leading you in your team in points for a while there, having a strong season. You're going to look at Toffoli, another experienced veteran leading the team in goals, and you're going to look at Celebrini, the kid who's scoring 28 points in 31 games and already has 13 goals in that time. You're going to want to build your top line around one of these guys or a couple of these guys, and so I think Eklund gets shifted to the second line sometimes, or just bumps down and thrown together, pieced together on a line, while Warsofsky's trying to create that top line, that alpha line, that when he finds that right combination, then it's set for the next few years.
And I think there's really, well, first and foremost, my question is, are all those guys you just mentioned natural centers, or are there a couple of them wingers as well? Because I know Celebrini is a natural center.
Yeah, Celebrini's a natural center. Granlund is also a natural center. He's technically the top line center as far as the roster designation is. So technically, Eklund would be listed as our right wing number 1. In reality, though, it's typically Will Smith when he's in the game, or Toffoli, who is being paired up with Celebrini. And I think whether you call it the second line, the third line, the first line, I think everybody knows that Celebrini's talent, and when you put some of these high goal scoring and high assists, like these just high point scoring talents around him, that is your top line. Whether or not it's listed as your line that starts the game, that Celebrini's line is your top line. Everybody knows the kid is a superstar. So I think you could call it your second line, your third line, and you could say Eklund's on your first line, but in reality, you don't feel like it's your true line number 1. So that's, I think, the only thing that maybe hampers him a little bit, is he is playing on that third line occasionally and stuff, and having to play more of those harder, dirtier minutes. I think that's why he's really great with his assists, though, is because when he's been able to thread passes, he's able to fight for pucks and get himself into those chances. He just doesn't always have the goal-scoring talent at the receiving end of the pass.
Okay. And to clarify to everybody out there who's not quite sure what we mean when we say natural centers, there are some players, I think, for example, Avalanche, Ross Colton is a great example. He is not necessarily a natural center. He actually is somebody who started out on wing and has been moved to center, but then can also play the wing. But when you're a natural at any of your positions, that just means like when you were training in junior or when you were going through college, that was the position that you knew. But sometimes, once you make it to the show or to the AHL, you'll get shifted because there's an overabundance of players at any particular position and you are lacking center depth. So you'll move a winger like Ross Colton to the center or vice versa. And like Mikko Rantanen, for example, he is a natural winger. He's a natural left winger. So that's what we mean when we say that. That's just their position that they've trained at the most and are most familiar and comfortable, because there really is a difference. My follow-up statement, though, about Coach Warsofsky is it's an interesting conundrum, because you have the liberty right now to really play around with those line combinations, since, no offense, you guys aren't playing for anything right now other than draft picks.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you have the luxury, but I think at the same time, it's like, okay, you want to start to find what you want those lines to be, because you want people to have time to develop chemistry together. This maybe is a poor example now, but Zibanejad and Chris Kreider always have played together for a long time, so they have really great chemistry. Like Zibanejad can drive down to the end of the ice and do a drop pass because he knows Kreider exactly where Kreider is going to be. And so you need to start picking out, okay, these are the guys that I want together and I want to keep them together, because you keep shifting people around if they can't develop that fluid line chemistry, like, for example, what I just mentioned does. So I think he needs to start to make his final decisions so they can start to figure it out, because I'd imagine most of these guys on the upper lines are going to stick around.
Yeah, I agree. There does need to be some stability, and it does seem, when healthy, Will Smith and MacLeod are always on the same line. Those two kids, they play the same style, and it works. So they just really have great anticipation for where each other will be. So that's one example of some stability. But yeah, even with the fourth line, who's active and who's inactive and who's a scratch, there's rotation there. So you're right, coach is taking advantage of that, but you're also right that you're right that it is a positive as well, and it's right for coach to take advantage of that and try to find the right combinations, but also the fact that, yes, we do want to have that chemistry honed in, that success. We've talked about it from other franchises before, and I'll raise you one better, the old Patrice Bergeron line.
That is, oh my God.
Like, that is the obvious, one of the best lines we have seen in hockey.
Are you referring to like Bergeron, Marchand, Chara line type thing? Obviously, Chara's a man, but
I was thinking, or Bergeron Pasta with Chara. You have Chara on defense, but Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasta out there together.
That line was fucking nuts, dude.
It was not unfair, but it was just unreal.
It was a cheat code for sure.
Yeah, it was. They were all too good, and were able to always just find a way, no matter where any of them were on the ice. So that's what the goal will be, and I think that's part of why maybe the lines are mixed up, is because coach knows Will Smith and Celebrini are meant to be on the same line. Like, they've come up through the same style of play, played in the same college system, played against each other, they've been in the same style of play. They both have that fluid, that high talent, like that fancier style that is based on speed and timing and just a really quick, intuitive, and just really inventive thinking that we see from them. They're very creative players. And so I think it's just a matter of finding who is that person who can fit in with their speed, their creativity, and not lead to turnovers on some of those passes, while still also grounding them and keeping them from getting too stretched or getting too creative and ending up creating vulnerability. I think it's trying to find that right balance, and that's a tough thing to find, and it might not be on the Sharks roster this year. That might be something they have to find from the draft or from the prospect pool with elevating more guys.
Two things. One, that's your one compliment, Bruins fans. Take it or leave it. That's all you're getting from me. But I think the guy that they're going to find is going to be in the draft or the prospect pool. I mean, when you're talking about speed and youth, you got to match it up with more speed and youth, I think.
Well, and ideally that's what happens, because then you can have this line play together for the next decade plus if it works out. And that's the recipe for success. That is what Boston did. Okay, now we're done talking about Boston. Back to the game.
Yeah.
So where was I? Oh, yes, Eklund scoring the power play goal. And I have to say, though, while this was good for the Sharks and it got the arena a little bit back into it, got the fans back engaged, like, all right, we have some life. It's 2-1 now. After the goal, Vegas became much more physical and really put a lot of pressure on the Sharks. A strong, heavy forecheck, was controlling more of the possession and getting many more shots on goal. They outshot the Sharks by, I believe, 12 or 13 in the period. So really taking control there after that goal. And Georgiev was actually forced to make a nice save off an offensive zone faceoff with less than a second remaining in the second period, a near buzzer beater type of goal, and he came up with a good save there. But the pressure from Vegas in the second period was rather continuous, despite the Sharks having that sense of maybe the possibility of getting some momentum. Vegas really did shut that down. But like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the power play for both teams was really good in this game. So the Vegas had their lone power play right at the start of the third period, basically, and they did convert on that to regain their 2-goal lead early in the third. But like I was saying, the Sharks power play was actually awesome in this game. I've had a lot of complaints about the power play. I think they're finally starting to get those lines figured out where that's been a bit more stable, and they, I think, figured out the right balance and who the defensemen should be on each lines. Because there was time there where they were trying out running 5 offensive guys out there, no defensemen on the power play, and times they were trying out 2. Yeah, there was a lot of experimentation going on, and we've had the same 2 pairings of 5 guys with Liljegren as the top line guy. Part of that as well is because Wallman would typically be our top D-man on the power play, but he has been injured for some time now. So Liljegren has stepped up into that role, and I think they finally found some chemistry. So anyway, they went 2 for 2, and the man I just talked about, Liljegren, actually fired the Sharks' second power play goal of the game home with 9 minutes left in the third, and this really re-energized the crowd. After that second period, they really were quieted quickly, but this definitely got the crowd into it, and it was a really nice shot, really nice play, skating backwards, just trying to find an open lane, and being able to fire it home. This game did end 4-2, though, and I told you Georgiev was not responsible for the 4th goal. So, Corey,
empty
for all
netter.
the fans out there, yeah, that's an empty netter. For everyone who couldn't already guess it themselves, so that was the final score, 4-2. Celebrini actually put some pressure on Mark Stone, had a chance at the empty netter, and Celebrini did just enough to mess up Mark Stone, so he went just wide left of the net. He was on the other side of the red line at the time, so of center ice, so it was not icing. The Sharks went in to retrieve the puck, and it was actually Celebrini coming up through his own defensive zone and had the puck taken off his stick by Stone, so he stole it back and was able to pass it over to former Shark Tomas Hertl, who delivered the dagger.
Oh, that's tragic.
Yeah. Yeah, I told you when you said I feel pain to start the episode. I was like, yeah, I'm right there with you, because I liked Hertl, and Hertl is still, he's a good guy. He's a nice player. We talked about how nostalgic it was coming back to San Jose and how he misses some of the guys there, and he just always loved playing in San Jose, loves the fans, loves it. So he was very happy to come back. I think he's someone who also helps soften this rivalry a little bit, because he's just such a likable person who is well liked by both franchises, and who speaks highly of both franchises. So it is a heartbreaking thing, because that was a guy that was supposed to be our future before, and then the teardown happened, and then here we are now in the rebuild. So but it was supposed to be him and like Kevin LeBanc, and they were supposed to be the future when we let guys like Pavelski and Bernsey go. But anyway, the fall of the Sharks is something for another episode that I could go on and about for half an hour or more. So some final thoughts on the game here is that Vegas was the better team. They played the better game. They won the game. The Sharks had a stronger first period probably than other parts of the game. They were okay in the third, but I still wouldn't think that's great. When you're down, you should be able to take more opportunities, and Vegas just kept up the pressure, which is what you should do when you're in the lead. If you're in the lead, you shouldn't sit back and turtle, but a lot of teams do, and the Sharks were unable to really enact that reaction or force that reaction out of Vegas. But I said it at the start, and Georgiev was actually solid in this game. For one, he gave up less than 4 goals. I know I said that already, but, I've been hard on calling him Forgiev, so I want to recognize this, that, hey, it happened. It is possible. I'm sorry for being so mean about it and so harsh for that play. And again, it's not all his fault when goals are scored. And in this game, he actually made 38 saves on 41 shots, Corey. So that's a 927 save percentage.
Yeah, solid game.
It's a solid game, and it's a great game when you consider you're playing against a team who leads the NHL in points with 28 wins in 40 games. 28 wins in 40 games. That leads the league as well. That's tied with Winnipeg, who has played 2 additional games. So right now, Vegas is firmly in that 1 seed, that in the power rankings.
Don't tell them that. Don't let them know.
Well, I say it because it makes Georgiev's performance all that much better.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Because for him to actually turn in a good game against that the best team in the NHL right now, that's really great to see. It had been about a week since he last played, and when Coach Warshawski was asked about why he's playing him, it's like, well, we got to play him. He's here. Like, it's been a week. We're going to play him. And I think a lot of us, and even despite this strong performance, I believe the Sharks do need to go back to Askarov. He's already shown the potential to be this game-changing goaltender, and we've talked about it here, Corey, about just getting as many reps from as many games under his belt so that he is ready for that full-time role next year where he starts 50 or more games, 60 or more games, So if you're playing 3 games in a week, you're ideally having him start 2 of them. That is the goal, right? And so maybe, or if you're playing a week with 4 games, ideally they're every other day, and you're starting him 3 of those games. You play him 2, then he rests 1, and then you play him 1, and then you play him 1 to start the next week, and then you rest him, and you want to have him starting 2 games for every 1 Georgiev has to start. You don't want that to be an even split. And then eventually, if he has the stamina for it and isn't injured, you want him to start every game, for crying out loud. Like, only rest every once in a while, like the way Hellebuck does. Where it really comes down to like 1 out of every 4 games that he rests.
And I mean, that was my primary question, right? Because I mean, I agree with Coach Warsofsky. Like, yes, you have a backup goaltender, and the importance of playing them is to make sure they don't go totally cold. You need to still keep them warm, quote unquote, and give them game action so they're still playing. Like, you can't, this isn't, the 90s, early 2000s where Martin Brodeur can play 72 to 80 games. He can't play the whole season unless he's injured. That's just a different culture now with how goalies operate. So, I understand that, but I agree with you. Why not start Askarov in this game? And especially, to me, like, put Askarov in against all the high-level opponents. Because win or lose, you need that experience. Georgiev has it, man. Just put him in against the other bottom feeders. That'll be the night Askarov gets to rest. But, like, against Vegas, even if Georgiev had a good game, which it sounds like he did, you need Askarov in there. Why are you not throwing Askarov in there? So my question is, do you think there's still like a bit of lingering doubt from coaching and management's point of view? Like, they're still kind of like, oh, well, he's still a young kid. He's not like been a number 1 like Georgiev has. I don't know if we can make him like the number 1 and usurp the number 1 spot. Like, do you think that that's something that exists?
Well, not so much that. I do think it's that he's young, he's a kid. They don't want to burn him out. I think it's just like, I'm not a big baseball guy, but the best metaphor I can think of is when you bring along a pitcher too fast and you have him play too many games, he risks like blowing out his arm or his shoulder, and he can't throw as fast, or he can't throw again sometimes. Needs that massive repair surgery and things. So if you do too much too fast, in the human body just doesn't matter how great you are. Sometimes the human body just needs time to adapt. And so that's always the risk, is the fear of even though if he's not injured, injury being caused from fatigue or from just having so much stress on the body, so much game action, and risking him for maybe next season. So that to me would make sense. Also considering, like you said, Georgiev does have that experience and have that top playoff experience. If I'm not mistaken, he has a solid track record from his time with the Avalanche over the last couple of years against Vegas. So in games against Vegas, he has performed very well.
Curious.
I believe so. I that was something I believe was said during the game from the announcing, but I don't know for certain. But what you were saying, absolutely, this would have made a lot of sense as a game for Askarov to start to get him that top level opponents, especially after he just beat the Lightning and the Devils. Keep riding the hot hand. You want to talk about keeping goalies hot? Well, your young goaltender's on a roll against top tier playoff opponents. Like, let him cook. So especially want an extra night of rest before this game against the Knights and at home. Go for it, because then the next game is also on an extra night of rest on the road in Utah. Like, Utah's not, yes, they're streaking and they're having a solid season, especially compared to what the Yotes used to do. That is a less important game than when you're playing the top NHL team and have a chance to give your goaltender a chance to face that team that they could be facing as early as next year when it comes to playoff time, especially a team in-house too, in the Pacific. That is a team of a rival. That is a team that you see multiple times a year. We've talked about how many times it's important to beat the teams in your division and in your conference.
Yeah. looking at these stats, he actually has 3 shutouts against Vegas, including his time in New York. Overall, he's a .906 save percentage with a 2.91 GAA, and he is 5, including the other game, 5-7-2 versus Vegas. So not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah, it is a solid performance, solid goaltender as far as, I mean, it's obviously you'd prefer a winning record, right? But it's, I can see the logic for why it was time. And like you said, if it is about keeping guys warm, then having him play once a week. And so he plays once every week. If there's 2 games, they each play 1 game. If there's 3 games, you give Askarov 2 games. I think that makes sense. And I've come around on that point of what you were saying for sure to agree with you. But just hear these numbers for a second.
Okay.
Against the 2 prior games played last week that Askarov played against Tampa Bay and against New Jersey, when he backstopped the Sharks to consecutive victories after their 8-game losing streak to start the year on a high note. And again, I say this again, playoff caliber top tier East teams right now. He made 52 saves on 55 shots on goal against some of the best the Eastern Conference has to offer. That is that's a 945 save percentage. That is insane. Like unreal for a kid to just come out there, put the team on his back, make some of the most unreal saves I've ever seen. And we talked about it last week, like just all over the place, all the time, like just somehow going from the edge of the far left edge of the crease all the way to the far right without missing a beat and making these saves. It is amazing to watch, and to do it against the competition he's doing it against, especially when the team is on a losing streak and is just struggling and needs a good showing. Like, that's, even if you need to play your backup goaltender, that's such a hard thing to put on the bench. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. 945. He's an AHL All-Star again this year, since he's technically still the Barracuda's number 1 goaltender.
The Barracudas, come on down. Go see them Barracudas. Come on, we got some spring rolls, deep fried Twinkies. Come see Barracudas. Yeah.
But just for everyone out there to know, when I say it's a 945 save percentage, if that doesn't mean anything to you, yes, this is small sample size.
You're silly if that doesn't mean anything to you.
Yes, but the league leading save percentage right now is Anthony Stolarz at 927. Right. Hellebuck is right behind at 926 and has a slightly better GAA at 2.08. In the last 2 games, Askarov is beating that top number by 18. And the GAA, it would be at 1.5. So I know it's 2 games, but it's 2 games in 3 days against top tier opponents on the road. Or no, the game against Tampa was at home. I stand corrected. Sorry. Anyway, point being, it's just so difficult to have him on the bench. I understand, and you're right. But this guy should be starting close to 60 games a year next year. He should be. If he's not injured, he should be playing close to. Maybe it's like 55, 57, but he should be playing more than a 50-30 split of games on next year.
He's definitely your guy in my mind.
He is the guy. He is the guy. And when we get this defense figured out, and if Wallman's healthy and locked up, if Liljegren is around, we still got Ferraro, who's pretty cheap right now as a defenseman that I think we can extend coming into next year. Like this, the pieces are there. When you think about what Sam Dickinson's doing in the OHL, we've seen Mook Madulin be serviceable, and he's come up and he's still young. He'll grow and improve. I mean, and look at what some of look how much better. I mean, they're still at the bottom of the league, but the offense is so much better than last year. Yeah. That jump that happened in 1 year, yes, Celebrini's a lot of it, but Mike Greer's done a really good job picking out players that are and getting good value for the money he's shelling out. And they're still going to have plenty of salary cap space, especially with potential salary cap increase. The Sharks, if they stay healthy, should be a real threat to win a lot more games next year. It was with Askarov playing like this, if he can keep this up into next season, it is very possible. You don't start the season on a 10-game losing streak type of thing. This guy, I mean, he's not going to let that happen. So sorry, I got a little sidetracked there because I just Askarov, like I said, is the future. In other Sharks news, Captain Logan Couture, I know you and I talked about this a bit, Corey. He is not actually close to returning. I saw a fresh article today. It did note that he still participates in team meetings and remains a leader, supporting many players off the ice. He's that person who's always in the locker room. He's always at home games. So he's really been in a de facto, like almost assistant coach role in his role as captain this season. So it is not like he is not with the team. His swelling is better overall, supposedly. However, it can flare up out of nowhere sometimes, and it's still not at a place where he can skate. So he's able to walk and move and be present, but he can't actually his body can't handle the stress of what it's like on the ice yet. So with no timeline, and it's almost a year as we near when we reach the end of January, it'll have been a year since his last game. It's to me looking like we won't see him at all in this second half of the season, and possibly not in the opener for next year. Yeah, we're looking at sometime in the middle of next season, possibly, is what I would say at the early end.
And it's tough because obviously we as Avalanche fans definitely relate to that pain of having your captain kept out due to injury. And it's such a tough thing. And I think Gabe actually talked about this on his episode of Face Off. If you haven't watched Face Off, Dom or otherwise, go and watch it. Really good. Amazon Prime. And season 2 is going to come out. So it's tough because you can be a leader off the ice. Yes, you can talk to the guys. You can be there to go over film, encourage them, say the right things. But as Gabe Landeskog says, he wants to be out there going to battle with them. And I mean, the best kind of leader is somebody who can lead by example. And when you can't be out there fighting alongside them, there's only so much you could do from the sidelines. So I can imagine that it's incredibly frustrating from a player perspective.
Oh, absolutely. You want to be on there. It has to put doubt in your mind. You have to be confident to be a professional athlete and believe in your skills, your ability to keep up with the pace of the game. And it has to put doubts of whether or not you'll be able to play at all, if you'll be able to play the way you used to, if it is the end of your career, if it's the end of playing hockey, this sport you love so much and have been very lucky to play as a career. So there's so much that goes on mentally, not just wanting to play and be out there on the ice, but especially as the leader of your team, wanting to be out there with your boys. It's like I use the metaphor, but do you want to be the guy who sends his troops into battle but is never seen or is never out there with them, or do you want to be out there with your guys? You want to look out for your men on the field, or on the ice in this case. That I think is in the heart of any good leader. And so the best ones, I think, suffer the most from when they miss time.
Yeah. Exactly.
But with that is all of my Sharks news for the tank this evening. So thank you, everybody, for embarking on that journey with me. It was a bit longer than I maybe expected for having only one game. So thank you for following along. We were having a good
discussion about a lot of things, though. And that was what was nice about it, is even with one game, it gave us the chance to get into the nitty gritty of players, of the game, of a lot of different things. So, it was a fun opportunity to maybe kind of dive more into the Sharks as a whole, rather than just on a game by game basis.
Oh, absolutely. And I appreciated that opportunity a lot. So thank you, Corey, and thank you all for listening. But I would love to hear the updates on the Avs past week.
Oh, boy. So the Avalanche were on an 8-game point streak, and it just got snapped tonight, which was the longest in the NHL. So y'all better watch the fuck out. It was funny because I said the Avs were going to go on a run like 1,000 years ago, and it didn't quite happen then, but it happened now. So it did still happen. And I said, I don't know if you recall, Dom, that when the Avs were off to their rough start, I said, we're going to look back on all of this rough start, and we're going to laugh. Well, here we are halfway through the season, The Avs are firmly in a playoff position, whether that's third place for the wild card or whatever. They are in a playoff position comfortably now. It's really just the 4 teams at the top of the Central Division duking it out for who gets what spot at this point. Yeah, you have the Blues and you have Utah lurking, but I just don't see those teams overcoming what is ahead of them, frankly. The Central is an unbelievably stacked division this year. And so I feel comfortable that the Avalanche are going to confidently make the playoffs. Could I tell you what position they're going to be in by the time we get around to there? No, because now we have hit the new year. And Dom, you might remember this last year that the Jets were really good up until the end of the new year, and the calendar turned to January and they just fell off a cliff. So I'm really interested to see if that's what's going to happen again this year.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't happen for your own franchise's sake, so that something similar does not befall the Avalanche.
Oh no, not at all. I'm saying I hope it happens to the Jets.
Oh, well, yes. Yeah, I was just saying, since you were saying how the Avs were hot coming into the end of the year on the 8-game point streak,
I
was
see
saying I hope it doesn't.
No.
I hope it doesn't happen to the Avalanche, but sure, yeah, it can happen to the Jets
I'm hoping,
again.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying in the grand scheme of the division, that's what happened to the Jets last year, and I'm hoping that they once again fall off a cliff.
Well, and I think it happens to teams every year. Maybe not falling off a cliff, but there are first half teams and second half teams, and it just happens where the mileage starts to add up. People are more tired. They just have a little less jump. They have a little less fight when it comes to the game. They start to lose, and that just starts a negative cycle. When the closer you get to the end of the season, the more the reality of it's going to be the postseason sets in, and you're playing out there for honor. You're showing up as a professional, and you're gonna do your job and try to win, but at a certain point when there's nothing to lose, that I think that can just be there's nothing to win. Actually, you can win the game, but it doesn't actually mean anything in the grand scheme, unless you're playing spoiler in those specific games. Then it's I feel like it's hard for guys to have the full heart in it, even if they think they're trying their best. That feeling of like just maybe your body doesn't give it 100%, even if your brain thinks it does.
Yes, I definitely understand that. And I think, to your point, the Avs have always been a strong second half team. I make that assertion, but I don't know if it's true. It feels true based on what we've seen in the past, but I will actually look into that statement now. I'll see if the Avs usually collect more wins in the first or second half of their seasons. We'll go back to when they started having playoff success. So I'll look after the conclusion of this episode, bring you all the results for that next week. But you talk about spoilers, and I think the ultimate spoiler for any season is actually the Montreal Canadiens, who are in or were in a wild card spot. Could it happen? I don't know. They might. But the Montreal game, it really in essence is what we would call, everyone, low event hockey. Not a lot happened in this game, to be perfectly honest with you. And when it ended, it was a shootout victory for Montreal. And unfortunately, if I had to pin just one weakness on Mackenzie Blackwood, just one, it would be that if the game goes to a shootout, whoever's team he's on, they're not winning the game, as I'm sure Dom can attest to.
Yeah, it wasn't just him. The Sharks couldn't win shootouts, so maybe you guys will have better luck because your offense can actually put the puck in the net. It'll keep you guys in shootouts. But for a man who can make some really impressive saves at game speed, I think the stop-start action of one-on-one, because he can make one-on-one saves when guys are coming at him full speed. Yeah, game speed, he's great, but when guys are coming in slow, I think if anything, the reason he's so good is he has good instincts and he's jumpy. But if you jump too much too early in a shootout, it's easy. It's so easy to deke in a shootout when you're 1-0.
Yes, and to the Canadiens' credit, they have some of the best shooters in the league, one of whom is Cole Caulfield, whom I actually like quite a bit. But what was frustrating about this game is it just, as I saw it summed up, is that the offense dried up. Mikko Rantanen scores an early power play goal, and that was it. That was all they were able to muster. But what was interesting from what I was able to catch of this game, I caught the first 2 periods. I was seeing Harry Potter at the Symphony, so I missed the 3rd period.
Oh, nice.
I know. But I'm not doing a good job as an Avalanche reporter. But I still can say that the Avalanche just ran into a hot hand. Lucas Dovish has been quite insane despite a small sample size, with only one goal going past him in 2 games. And what was
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's been really good. And he stoned some great teams. Obviously, he shut out the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, which is no easy task to accomplish, as well as obviously limiting the high-scoring Avalanche to just one
Holy
single goal.
shit.
Yeah, so
56 saves on 57 shots.
yeah. So that
When
just,
I was just talking before about Askarov having 52 on 55 and giving up 3 goals. Wow.
so yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So I mean, the Avalanche ran into that because the Canadiens were on the tail end of a back-to-back where they had also lost to the Blackhawks the night prior, and for the first 2 periods, that's how the Canadiens looked, is like a team who was coming off of a back-to-back, and the Avalanche maintained control of play for much of the game, and yet they just couldn't get it past Dovish. And I think with the quality of shooter that Cole Caulfield is, he's not going to miss, and he was able to get the equalizer. And with strong play from their goaltending, plain and simple, they were able to push the game all the way to a shootout. So, glad the Avalanche come away with the point. But what's so funny to me is, of the 3 games this week, the games that they are winning are against high caliber playoff opponents, and the games that they're losing are against bottom feeder or middling teams. Yes, I know Montreal has gotten into a wild card spot, but let's kind of be real with ourselves for a second. So yeah, it's funny to me that those are the games that the Avalanche will drop, and it continues to be an issue of playing down to the level of your opponent. And again, Chicago and Montreal are both still professional hockey teams, but no offense, you should be leveling these motherfuckers. If you're a playoff team, I don't care who you are, Avalanche or otherwise, if you're going against a bottom 16 team, bottom 6, we'll say bottom 6 team, you should be leveling them every time.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to be a real Stanley Cup contender, you want to be breezing through those games against the bottom feeders, and that's just 101 right there. So it does play to the Avs' benefit though when they play to their opponent, because they will also play up when they play against those better teams. They show up, which in a sense, those are the games. Maybe they just know. Maybe the players just feel it in their bones that it matters more. This game matters more. It's a tiebreaker. It's a head-to-head. It's against that rival we're competing with a playoff spot for, and sell out more for it. Like let's go get that win. It's hard to say.
Exactly, and I mean, as we always say, anybody can win on any given night. And I think the Avalanche could have won this game if Montreal had any other goaltender in net. I really do attribute a lot of this success to Lucas Dovish. And the Avalanche have ran in their past 3 games that we're talking about. Every game had a hot goaltender. And I sometimes worry that the Avalanche will get goalied, as we'll talk about with the Chicago game. But that really isn't always the case. And I think if it's an inconsistent incident, then we're okay. Every team gets goalied every once in a while. Every once in a while, a goalie just puts together a fucking legacy game, and nobody, not even Wayne Gretzky, would score on them. So it's just something that happens. But I mean, that's really just the nature of the Montreal game. They just couldn't put up more goals on Dovish. But we'll move on to the Panthers game, because that was definitely a lot more exciting. The Panthers strike first in this game, and it felt like it's a situation where you outplay the opposition near the entire period, but you end up on the losing end on the score sheet. It feels ridiculous, but Florida's a fantastic team that capitalizes on those little mistakes. On their goal, Keaton Middleton needed to keep up with Carter Verhaeghe, and had he done that, then the other Florida player going up the slot wouldn't have had Verhaeghe, mind you, as an option, and McKenzie would have only had to square off and likely would have had a better chance against one opponent. But what happens is Keaton's with Verhaeghe down the line, and Verhaeghe passes the puck to the slot, and Keaton Middleton, for whatever reason, peels off and chases the puck like a golden retriever. And so then the player in the slot's able to easily pass it back to Verhaeghe, and he gets a wide open tap in. And they had lit up Bob pretty much that entire period, the Avs did. And yet they were down 1-0 on the score sheet. So you're frustrated watching that because it felt like the Avalanche were once again controlling the game, particularly against a high skill opponent like the Florida Panthers. I do not give a shit what the Florida Panthers record is at any point in the year. Watch the fuck out, especially come playoff time. The Florida Panthers are still gamers, and it would not surprise me to see them make another deep run this year. They are a fantastic team. But going into period 2, the power play looked genuinely fantastic. It just was not going in. And I attributed that fact mainly to Bobrovsky, as the Avalanche were creating opportunities and scoring chances. They just weren't finishing, and it was not going in. And Bob was dialed. But based on that fact, based on the Canadiens game before, I imagine that the message for the Panthers game was to generate, create the offense. And really, no matter how dialed the goalie is, if you keep shooting, it'll go in. At least that's what I would like to gaslight myself to believe. The Panthers, though, they grind hard, and to get a puck anywhere on the ice, it seems like the Cats' lines always know where their teammates are and will be. And you can just see them operate in layers, constantly lending support. If one guy loses it, another guy's coming up from the neutral zone to grab it. One guy's getting beat along the wall, another guy comes in and effortlessly pokes it out, and then a third guy comes in and scoops it away. It's insane just how disciplined and styled the Panthers are. And I don't necessarily mean discipline in the fact they don't take a lot of penalties, because they do, but discipline in their system structure. However, it was curious that the Panthers didn't have more shots on goal up to this point in the game, because they had done a great job getting to the Av zone and staying there, creating chaos, but they really didn't actually throw a lot on the net. Now, something that I've had an issue with recently is Jared Bednar has been separating Nathan MacKinnon and Arturi Lehkonen, and I just think that's a mistake. Obviously, injuries are kind of limiting the options right now, so I understand why it has to be that way, but they need to be on the same line. Their chemistry is genuinely unmatched. It's fantastic. Now, Dom, do you want to know how many posts the Avalanche hit before a puck finally went in the goal during this game?
Oh, tell me, Corey, how many?
3 posts before it finally goes crossbar off of Bob's ass and in. Before that, they also Cale Makar hit a crossbar, and it ricocheted back into Bob's armpit for him to perfectly catch. It felt like no matter what the Avalanche could do, it wasn't going in. But Devon Toews lasers it from the blue line, the blue line, goes off of Bob's ass, and the Avs have in fact beat Bob dead to rights. And Nathan MacKinnon also had one off the post. They had gotten robbed and nearly did again, but thankfully that one went in. But for this game, and tell me, I think you'll understand what I mean when I say this, Tom. There is a certain magic to games like this. It was a low-scoring affair, and do I want the Avs to beat up on the Panthers like they did last time and score 7 goals? Yes, but this truly felt like a playoff game, a game where 2 behemoths are playing at the highest of levels, just trading possessions, trading O-zone and D-zone time, just going back and forth, trying to find that little mistake that they could take advantage of. And when the Avalanche, as you mentioned, play these kind of opponents, they will play to that level. You look at this game and you go, wow, this is what the top of the NHL looks like.
Absolutely. And I think what you said there is absolutely right, where it is like a playoff game, where just because there aren't a lot of goals scored, if anything, that means both teams are playing really well. If there's no goals scored, that means, yes, you have great goaltending, but we said it starts with the guys in front of them too. And if both teams are having offensive opportunities and going back and forth on the ice, it is exciting to watch. I think that's something that people take for granted or don't always know when first getting into hockey, or they just assume it's like, oh, there's not as many points scored. It's not going to be exciting. It's not like basketball with all this back and forth. And it's like, no, there is. There is actually a lot of back and forth in the really good games. And a low score game is sometimes, depending on the two teams that are playing, it is the symbol of a really good game. Obviously, if you have two bottom feeders in a low-scoring game, that's probably the polar opposite of a really boring and ugly game with a lot of turnovers.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because it's such a fine line between, or not actually, no, scratch that thought. No, the fuck it's not. Like, you look at low-scoring games, because the Avalanche had, 3 of them in a row here. Like, you look at the Montreal game, and it's a low-scoring game, but it was overall low-event hockey. Not a lot really happened. But you look at the Panthers game, and it's a low-scoring game, but there was still so much that happened. Players were getting chances, ringing it off the post. Mackenzie Blackwood and Bobrovsky were making insane saves one after the other. So, I mean, there's still a lot happening in the game, just pucks aren't going in. Whereas with low-event hockey, a goal scored here and there, teams kind of go back and forth, but, like, not a lot of offense is being generated. It's really just kind of a defensive battle. Look at the New York Islanders. They're great for watching low-event hockey if you want some defensive clinics.
Just go to the store. Just go to the state of New York right now.
Yeah, just go to the state of New York.
Just have 2 New York teams play, and that'll be low-event hockey.
Or I see what you're saying.
You can't have 3 play in a single game.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. But yeah.
Anyway, please continue.
That's kind of the difference that I'm referring to for those listening out there. But my friend put it perfectly. He said, post for the first star of the game, Alex. Well, the period 3 had my eyes glued to the screen. The level of play somehow from the first 2 periods elevated immensely on both ends. Because at this point, we have a tie game. And I complained that the Avalanche need to get the go-ahead goal, and Devon Toews, with his second of the game, answers my prayers from the blue line. He threw a sinker at the net. Juuso Parssinen skirts right in front as Devon Toews shoots the puck, takes Bob's eyes away. That's the only way it was getting by him. It had to be a goofy goal, and it had to be one he couldn't see. And, he was sharp the whole game, Bob was. And it felt like that was the time the team needed to explode and get one more. They did once the empty net finally opened up. Interesting fact is the Panthers have only used 24 players this year, and that is the fewest in the league. They have been incredibly healthy this year. And I found out tonight that the Avalanche have lost 178 man games just this year. That's just this year, which I'm sure is worse over the last few years as we've looked at. So it just tells you how healthy that the Panthers have been this year, and you could only be envious of that kind of health. During this game, Juuso Parssinen got his first Avalanche point through hard work and effort, a great assist on the second Devon Toews goal. Devon Toews, by the way, had 7 points in 4 games. He's been absolutely electric. And I meant to say that last episode, that Buffalo Rider who we were referring to also kind of took a shot at Devon Toews, calling him just a defenseman. No, that's not just a defenseman. That's Devon Toews. He's part of the first pair for Team Canada. Put some respect on the man's name. And he got hot at the right time, just putting points on the board. Devon Toews is not the most offensive defenseman, but he is a defensive defenseman who will get you a goal, who will get you a point here and there, and can chip in when he needs to. He is a defenseman first, but man, he is just an incredible player. My fear was, though, as I mentioned, when the Avalanche come up against a really good goaltender, even when they are playing super well like they did tonight, can they still win? The answer is yes. I also called the 3 stars of the game. I said Bob deserved one of the stars. He was number 3. Blackwood was number 2. And, of course, Devon Toews was number 1. I'm very good at that. Now, let me
done.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I just knew in my heart of hearts. Well, I am shocked that the Avs won this game, not due to poor play, because they genuinely played really amazingly. Sergei Bobrovsky was genuinely just that good, along with his posts.
It always helps to have 2 nice posts around you to help block some opportunities. But yeah, I know what you mean. Bobrovsky is one of those ones where we don't always see those electric Hellebuck-style games, but when he has them, he is really difficult to beat. I would say nigh unbeatable, but you guys just beat him.
So there you go. And it's funny because Bob can be up and down sometimes, but man, when he's locked, he is locked. And he really was. So I'm very happy that we managed to take that game. Well, speaking of locked goaltenders, the Avalanche unfortunately could not overcome Peter Mrazek tonight against the Blackhawks. Trent Miner gets his first NHL start tonight against the Hawks since Wedgwood is injured, and they will still need Blackwood tomorrow against the Wild and Jets on Saturday. To me, going into the game, that meant that the Avalanche needed to be very tight defensively, limiting the Hawks' high-danger chances and ability to get pucks to the net, which meant limiting Chicago's O-zone time, just lots of limiting. Protect the kid, the zone, and his confidence, and keep Bedard away from him. Just spoiler alert, the Avs failed on a lot of these fronts tonight. As I've mentioned, nope, don't need to say that. So Juuso Parssinen hit his first goal tonight, a gross backhand. And you usually don't want to go backhand. You want to go forehand, unless your name is Sidney Crosby. But, man, it worked out perfectly. I think Mrazek didn't read it quite right, and it was a great way to start the game because Mrazek stones MacKinnon a lot, so the depth guys got to show up. And, well, another spoiler, Mrazek stoned MacKinnon all night. Multiple point-blank chances that Mrazek somehow teleported across the crease to stop. I cannot even express to the audience listening how infuriating this game was to watch. Like, it was ridiculous. The Avalanche had so many great chances generated by their top line, and none of them went in. Like, if you watch some of the highlights from this game, the Avalanche had some insane cycles going. Credit to the Blackhawks, who just got sticks in lanes and were able to do a lot of takeaways. It was very irritating. So you've done a great job at irritating the fuck out of me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Anyway.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're not a Blackhawks fan. Get out of here.
I know. I'm just saying it on
Get the
behalf
hell
of
outta
Chicago.
here.
It's the only thing for Chicago to be happy about is being
I
annoying.
don't want them to be happy. Not right now. Be happy when you're not playing the Avalanche.
Fair enough.
But a fun fact is that Juuso Parssinen was a 7th round, 210th pick. And I think they see potential in his ability to play well. He actually has gotten some power play time with Drouin once. Oh, yeah. Drouin was out again tonight. And really just summarizing this game, this is still an Avalanche team that is missing Valeri Nichushkin and Jonathan Drouin. And yes, we pump the one player does not a team make, but these are important players. Their impact on the ice cannot be understated. Yes, the Avalanche can still win games without them. They have done it, but it is much easier for the Avalanche to win with them. And unfortunately, Valeri Nichushkin will be out for this entire road trip, one of the hardest ones, even though it's a short one, on the Avalanche's schedule. And apparently Jonathan Drouin was out due to the same lingering injury. It just feels like nobody can get healthy for the Avalanche. And we'll talk a little bit more about it here in a bit. But what's funny is it was stated that the Avalanche still have a -17 first period goal differential. But to me, and I will look into this, if you look at the differential since Blackwood was acquired, I'm sure it's much better. And I can tell you just from the get-go, it's much better. That's one of those things where the Avalanche failed their first couple of exams, but they've gotten 100s on the last few. But, you know, it's a lot easier to tank your grade than it is to raise your grade. So
Makes sense.
I can say confidently that their first period ever since getting Blackwood has been immensely better. But tonight, and I can really say this was the theme for the whole game. This was just a first period note, but this definitely kept up as the game went on. I don't think the Avs were as heavy on the puck as they needed to be, and they got stripped. It got taken away in their D zone quite a bit, and they were struggling in the neutral zone. And to the Avs' credit, the Hawks weren't able to do much in their O zone when they had it. But, you know, the Hawks had a quick assault after this, and the Avs finally paid for lazy passing and turnovers in their own zone. And you could see how the goal was going to go in from a mile away. Bedard comes in, breaks up a pass, goes straight to his teammate. He goes in, does a little weird deke, like backhander thing, and it goes in. Do you know what I mean when I say that? Like they skate to the front of the net and they do like the head fake and they're like, and then it goes in. That thing?
Yeah.
Like, it's so funny. I think you know exactly what I mean by that.
I actually do. I don't know how to describe it any better though. So that's what makes it even funnier.
That's how you know we watch a lot of hockey. But this period, the first period should not have been tied. The Avs did overall play better. And I said they cannot drop this game and they cannot play down to their opponent. They needed to win it and get it done. The Avs got too lackadaisical after the first goal scored by Parson, and they just sat back way too much. They need to be hungry. Drop 6 on this team. Collect your 2 points. You need everything for the next 2 days or a few days to set a
collect
good.
your 200.
Yeah, set a good precedent. And I mean, it is just frustrating. And once again, Dom, the Avalanche gave two players their first. They gave Frank Nazar his first NHL goal of the season and the first NHL point for Colton Dock, brother of Kirby Dock. And it ended up after that being 2-1 Chicago. Why? I do not understand why Colorado struggles against fucking Chicago. After that, Connor Bedard kicked a goal in, which was called back. Later, he scored one just on a great pass. Like I said, keep Bedard away from the net. They did not do that. So Chicago did a disturbingly good job of stuffing and hemming Colorado in their own zone. They were all over Nathan MacKinnon. They collected the Avalanche rebounds. And the Avalanche had a couple 2-on-1s with Ross Colton that were wasted. Colorado was not responsible as they needed to be in their own zone. And it's kind of amazing how much anxiety you feel as an Avs fan when a member of the Lumberyard is not in net. No offense to Trent Miner. It really was not a lot of his fault, but I am mad, particularly because the Avalanche's top line was generating unbelievable chances, but nothing got past Mrazek. I also hated hearing Darren Pang call us the first wildcard team. Even though it's true, we held the 3rd place position for so long. And the moment we lose it, we're on national TV and that gets mentioned. We couldn't get on national TV when we were still in 3rd place. And Peter Mrazek, fun fact. Oh yeah, here's the 3rd first. Hasn't won a game. Not really a first. Hasn't won a game since November 27th and has an .834 save percentage. And he was playing the game of his fucking life against the Avalanche. Why? What?
I feel the need to insert a 3rd grader saying because.
That's really all I can say. The Avalanche got goalied. This is what it means to get goalied. You will do everything in your power to put the fucking pucks on the net and nothing goes in. Peter Mrazek might as well have had fucking wings. He snorted a line of fucking coke before the game. Oh my God. I don't even know how Juuso Parssinen got the first one past him. So, yeah, it was just a very frustrating game because every point matters. This is not who you need to lose to. So the Avalanche better show the fuck up tomorrow against Minnesota. I expect the best because they're going to get Gustafsson tomorrow, who actually has a save percentage over 900. So you better come and fucking play. I am so sick of this shit. Again, this is an Avalanche team that is injured. I can attribute to the loss to a lot of things, but for fuck's sake, Chicago doesn't even really have a 3rd and 4th line. Get out there and destroy them, please. So it's just a lot of frustration on my end because for whatever reason, every divisional opponent has not lost either. Every game they play, they'll come back and win. For example, Dallas was down 3-0 against the New York Rangers, but it's the New York Rangers who are fucking booty. So fucking Dallas comes back, scores 3 straight, wins the fucking game. Come on. The Avalanche literally cannot make up any ground because the Wild won't lose, the fucking Jets won't lose, the Stars won't lose. Fucking even the Blues and the fucking Utah Hockey Club aren't losing. You can't lose. Go ahead.
Well, and this is your opportunity to force one of them to lose. We talked about it. If everybody's not losing, this is a 4-point game. This is not a 2-point game. This is for 4 points.
Exactly. So, I mean, they better show up tomorrow, especially against the Wild and the Jets, because that is your real chance to gain ground. So now you have to walk away from this road trip with 4 points instead of 6, but you better be walking away from it with 4. You have to make up ground on these teams. Again, I'm not worried about the Avalanche losing a playoff spot, but I don't want them to be in the wild card seed. They need to be seeded higher than that to have better statistical odds of making it all the way to the finals. So we need to lock it down here. This was just not a great game to watch. It was frustrating as a fan. And that's where I am at the end of the day. I like to do numbers and stats. I've not done well at that lately. I apologize, but I'm a fan first and foremost. And, the point of the podcast was to talk about the games from the perception of a fan. And, well, this is my perception of this game. It was fucking shit to watch. I did not have a good time.
I'm sorry, man. I feel
okay. Okay, it happens.
That's those games happen to everyone though. Just as much as you can get, like you said, you can getting goalied happens. Anybody can win any night, and sometimes that anybody is just one player who decides not to lose and wills their team to victory. And it's not even a whole team effort as much as one guy.
Yeah, no, you're very right. It does happen to everybody. And I mean, if all 82 games were perfect, it would genuinely not be any fun. It would make the really great games not seem as great. So, nobody's ever going to win all 82 games, but man, you don't want to be dropping games to these guys. Like, you'd rather lose a tightly contested game to somebody like the Florida Panthers, like we just played. Of course, you always want to win, but it's like you don't want to lose in this fashion and lose any ground to what you're trying to do. So, yep, that's just the nature of the beast, though. So, excuse me, we will persevere and keep pushing forward. Well, Dom, I thought tonight, because that's the end of my malding, my ranting, my sadness. But the Avalanche are still doing really well right now, so it's great. But I thought to fill in some time here, I had a couple of fun questions to pose to you.
Yeah, go for it. I can't wait to hear them.
What is your definition of a game breaker?
A game breaker. Well, I guess let me ask you a question for more detail. Are
Sure.
you referring to game breaker as in like an individual player, like they just a game changer, they can take a game and turn it on its head type of thing? Is that what you're trying to go for? Or are you thinking like a game breaker? What's the type of thing that can ruin a game and make a game not enjoyable to watch?
The former.
The former. Okay. A game breaker. Like, well, I guess it is that. It is the player who is so incredibly talented that it is the player that can go the full 80 feet. They will take the puck end to end. They have the talent to hold on to the puck. They have the hands for that. They have the speed. They have the strength. A game breaker is someone who has the combination of raw talent and hockey, just skill, the hands part, right? Combined with the strength, the physicality, and the mental game, the actual intelligence to be able to identify things and be able to be creative and think on the fly. So I think a game breaker, when we think of those type of traits, a game breaker is that rare player who can have all of them, and who, when you think of a team and you're game planning for a team, you're coming up to an opponent, who's the person that you're trying to eliminate from your opponent, who you're trying to keep from scoring. If you don't have one person you're targeting, then they don't have a game breaker, or they have a lot of good players, so nobody really stands above from the rest. But I think that's the other part of a game breaker, is they really are head and shoulders above everybody else around them. I think it's something that you see from Makar, for example, as a game breaker when it comes to defensemen. I think Brent Burns in his prime was that same game-breaking style defenseman, although Makar is to another level. I obviously that's I love Brent Burns, but I can see that Makar is a lot better. We hear it a lot about McDavid, and I know I don't want to go down this path a long time, because I know you and I are both a little sick of hearing McDavid get his laurels despite not having a cup. And you see what he and Draisaitl do together every year, and I would consider them both to be game breakers with their ability. The fact that Draisaitl can just score with like 1 degree of an angle, and that's all it takes.
And batshit insane when you see some of his replays.
Yeah, that is game breaker. And when you see goalies, those ones that come across from left to right and make the great save, strong glove, the Hellebuck style things. That's a game breaker. You break your opponent's game plan. So I think that would be my overall, considering both goalies and offensive players, what the traits are, what I would think of as a game breaker.
Thank you, Dom. Now, then the follow-up question to that is, do you think Macklin Celebrini or maybe even someone else on the Sharks has the potential to transform into what you have just defined as a game?
Oh, absolutely. If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Macklin Celebrini. We've already kind of seen him do it from like the highlights, that video clip I sent to you before, where he did all of those things I just described in one thing. He won a puck and won a race to a puck, was physical enough to actually get that puck when it was contested, steal a puck off a poke check, then dive to make sure that puck gets into the zone as the defender fights back, and then continue through the play, set up a shoot, then set up an assist that then actually ends up becoming his own goal, all in the span of like 10, 15 seconds. If that ain't a game breaker, I don't know what is. And he's only 18. He's gonna get better. He's gotten better every year he's played hockey since he was born. I guarantee it. So, yeah, that is. You compared him to a potential Sidney Crosby. That is a game breaker.
And I stick by it.
Yeah, as you should. I stand by it. I would stand by your words. I stand by it myself. I have the same thoughts. So, yeah, no, Celebrini would be the game breaker if I could only pick one, although Askarov has shown the potential to be a game-breaking goalie.
And not to perseverate on this topic too much longer, but I think based on your answer, there are different types of game breakers too. Like there isn't just one set thing that is a game breaker for a player. There isn't just one set of traits that makes them a game breaker. Like I would say MacKinnon, for example, when it is in his mind to score a goal, truly when the stakes are the highest, the St. Louis Blues goal is, of course, the best example. He will not be stopped no matter what you put in front of him. You could put an actual wall in front of him and he would go right through it and he would score that goal. You look at, I think we'll stick with your Brent Burns example because he was definitely still a much more defensively minded defenseman who could chip in offensively. If he needed to stop a play from happening, if it's the game-winning goal on somebody else's stick, he was going to do it. And then we'll look at, the goaltender, Connor Hellebuck. There's the wide open backdoor tap in. He somehow, and that's going to end the game right there. He somehow manages to get the leg across, the glove across, to get even a sliver of the puck to stop it from going in. So there isn't just one set of traits that makes somebody a game breaker. You can have different types of game breakers.
Absolutely. And I think when we talk about skaters, I think what makes a game breaker is the combination. Brent Burns, you mentioned, yeah, he would find a way to always win those races back to the puck when someone was in free and in alone, and he would just get there and he would be physical and he would win and not get penalties for it. He was really talented at that, but also had an insanely powerful slap shot. So he had a lot of assists from that way, but he also had a lot of goals that he ripped home too. So multiple traits there. I think when you talk about MacKinnon, his speed, his awareness, his skill with his hands, multiple traits. The fact that Makar is strong defensively and yet puts up more points than most forwards in the league, excuse me. So I think it really does come down to, if you're a game breaker, you are either the best at one thing or you are really good and really talented and just a special athlete who can have multiple skill sets or have those multiple traits. I think it's the fact of having multiple traits. You either have to be the best at your one trait and stand out from the pack. I think that's kind of what we see from Hellebuck. Or on the flip side, you have to be really talented and have multiple elements come together, multiple tools in your pocket. And then the biggest game breaker of all was Gretzky, who leads, well, until Ovechkin gets there, leads goals, leads assists. Like, he's unreal. So, that is the biggest game breaker we've ever seen. So I would say that anyone who would deign to be called a game breaker has to have some element of that image.
And if you want some other older examples, Avalanche fans, Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, Patrick Waugh are the ones that immediately come to mind. Those guys definite game breakers.
Also, when you mentioned Brodeur earlier, he was an absolute game breaker.
Absolute game breaker.
Bobby Orr way back.
They're a reason that these guys either have one or multiple Stanley Cups, because they could just shatter everything around them in their ability to play the game, unlike anybody else. Well, I also had another follow-up question about the Sharks. I think we kind of check in with this style of question every once in a while, but I say the Sharks season, I dare to say, has been very dynamic this year in both positive and negative ways. So for you, Dom, my question is, where are the Sharks now, and who do they need to get, or who do they need to get where they want / need to go?
Well, where they're at now is they've been struggling for offense recently. The goals per game is down from what it was at like a month or two ago. So they need some life. They need a little bit of energy, a jump, something new, creative, dynamic, something that they can deliver more points consistently. And I think we hit on earlier, the first step is I can't say what the player is. I have said we need more defense. The Sharks need multiple things. So I guess I should start with that technically. The Sharks do need better defense, better forechecking, better puck control. And so that does, I think, involve investing more in defensemen and better defensemen, and investing in defensive prospects in the draft. So I think that is one area of focus. I hope to see Greer continue to do his work in the free agent market into the next year, and as we hit the deadline and things, to see about what other prospects, what other players he can bring in for the future. However, when we talk about the offense, going back to what you said earlier, I think it's consistent lines. When we have all our guys healthy, and we have in the games where we were scoring 4 or 5 goals a game, I want to see those line combinations again. I want to see if it works again. It's once is just a fluke, twice is a coincidence, 3 times a pattern. If you start to get the same line combinations out there and not shake up the lines, like I would love to see Coach Warsofsky not change the lines, play the same 4 lines for like 3 or 4 games straight, and then rotate them and do those lines for 3 or 4 games straight. Like get a better sample size if you can, and see what's working, establish a pattern and stick with it. So that's where the Sharks are at now. They've had their ups and downs, especially in the world of goaltending, but that's on the way up. That box is checked. As long as Askarov doesn't get injured, you're fine moving forward. Offense overall, I think, has been good. I think there's potential, and we've seen it from Kovalenko. He's gone a little quiet since starting off hot, but I think that also is partly because he's been playing a bit lower on the lines recently and playing more in those physical minutes rather than necessarily being paired up with that top combo when he first came in and started playing with Celebrini and got those assists right away. So maybe it's Kovalenko, Will Smith, and Macklin Celebrini on a line, and that gets multiple guys going. Maybe it's bringing Zetterlund onto that line, because he's had really strong stretches of the season, but currently sits at 27 points in 43 games. He's also played every game, so he's been consistent. Same with Toffoli, played every game, 26 points. So we need those guys to stay healthy moving forward. So overall, to get back to the root of your question, the state of where we are now, we are a rebuilding team. That's really it sounds cliche and we say it a lot, but we're not going to necessarily win all these games. I don't expect when we match up against Vegas to win the game. Would I like to win because it's a game and my team is playing? Sure. Do I want to win even more because fuck Vegas? Absolutely. But do I think that means we're going to win against the best team in the league when we're in the bottom 5? Probably not. And so I think as a fan, where I'm at is, you want to beat the other basement dwellers just like where we started the season, but now in the games against that middler tier, that just outside the playoffs or in the playoff hunt tier, we've seen that the Sharks can win those games. Going into the season, they weren't winning those games last year. They can win them this year. And so those games are the ones I most enjoy watching, or I have the most excitement looking forward to, the most expectations to see, to gauge if the Sharks are improving. And then the games against the the real top tier opponents, I don't go expecting into those games expecting to win. That's where the team is at. I go into those games if there's if the Sharks are playing a team in the top 10, 12 teams in the league, I go in it just expecting it to be a loss. So anything better than a loss, even if it's an OT loss and there's that extra point, that's a bonus. That's a win. That's progress. That's a good thing. That is a sign of the potential of things to come. And that is the perfect example of where are we going. For that last part of your question, where are the Sharks going? That is where they are going. When they are on and they are having their nights, they are going toe-to-toe with these top playoff teams. So they just need to get that down consistently. And so that, again, comes down to consistent defensive play, consistent forechecking, and consistent lines on offense. So I guess those three things are what I would say are the root answer of the entire question.
Okay. Well, I think I will check in with you again, maybe at the end of the season, and see if your thoughts are maybe the same or maybe a little different. It's always curious to see, of course, from a fan perspective, where you feel your team is at and where the needs need to be addressed. Because, of course, we're not GMs. We don't know how the fuck that shit works, but we do have some idea, especially when we watch as much hockey as we do. And that's why it's fun to just kind of, think about it. So thank you, Dom. Well, two things about the Avalanche that I totally forgot to mention. The Avalanche have gotten their new team dog. It's so cute. It's so cute. It's this little black Labrador retriever. It's this little puppy dog. So waiting for the dog to grow. Obviously still needs to stay with its mother at the current moment in time. There are 3 names that are currently, it looks like, being played with. Summit, Blizzard, and Maxi. For those who don't know, Maxi was the nickname of Peter McNabb, longtime, Avalanche announcer. So there's the significance in that name. A lot of the guys, players on the team, liked the name Blizzard. And of course, some of the new guys aren't as aware of the significance of the name Maxi, but all of them, I think, are perfect. Appropriate. What do you think, Dom?
Well, I think since if Utah's not going to be named Blizzard, then you should snap up that name because it goes with Avalanche. So, or you should snap up that name before they do, and then you can say, "Hey, don't talk about our mascot. Our mascot's already Blizzard." That's just natural strategy move there. But I agree. I think any of those names are fitting.
But it also comes from Devon Taves' charity that he sponsors, Freedom Service Dogs. So good cause there. Super exciting that we now have a team dog, because a lot of teams have a team dog, and now we have a team dog, and we obviously have the best team dog. And oh my God, the picture is so
best
cute.
Good boy.
Good girl, actually.
Or good girl, sorry.
No, it's okay. You didn't know. But if I come across the post again, I'll send it to you, because oh my God, it's just this cute little bean next to a pocket. You're just like, oh! So yeah, very, very cute dog. Just a bit of lighthearted news to warm the hearts. Well, Dom, I this is not my own idea. I just saw the article title from the Denver Post, and for once I actually kind of agreed with it. Didn't read the article, but it made me at least think of this, and I assumed that this is what they were talking about. We haven't seen this team's, the Avalanche's, ceiling, have we?
Oh, absolutely not. Between the constant wave of injuries, one after another, you've been talking about week in, week out, you haven't had the full, healthy roster on the bench that of all your starters, all of your best players at any point this season. I don't think at a single point you've had the bench full with all of your stars.
No.
So I refuse to believe you've hit the ceiling until that happens. And you had a hint of Blackwood and Wedgwood. You had those few games before the Wedgwood injury. So I think the real ceiling will come when we get closer to the playoffs. I think there's a whole nother level that we'll see from the Avs.
And that's the hope, isn't it? But it's true with the level of injuries, and that's really what it boils down to, is just injuries. We have not yet seen what this Avalanche team is truly capable of when everybody is together and firing on all cylinders. And it's frustrating because, of course, you make chemistry with the guys that you're playing with. So when the guys that you need to be playing with actually come back, but sometimes doesn't look as good right away. And you really only hope that the Avalanche then have enough time to get everybody back and create solid line chemistry going into the playoffs, because you worry that, they won't have the chance to really do that. I mean, with Trent Miner, this is the 7th goaltender the Avalanche have played in net this season. Obviously, that position is more sound now, and this is just a victim of circumstance. But at no point, I think the number of games Valerian Nichushkin and Jonathan Drouin have played together this whole season has been like 5. It's insane how little these top players have actually played together. And I can only imagine how frustrating that is from a team front.
Yeah, I think it's frustrating for anyone when you're injured or when your buddy's injured, and obviously how that plays out on the ice. I think it's just that it's aggravating to not feel like you can get healthy. I think anyone feels that. Anyone can empathize with that. If it's like you beat one sickness and then something else happens, you get a bug bite on your body and then it finally goes away, and then you stub your toe and then that's feeling better, and then you, I don't know, drop your phone and it hits your kneecap or weird. I don't fucking know. You know what I mean? It's just one bad thing after another. You don't feel like you can catch a break. So I think realistically, anyone, athlete or no, could empathize with that frustration.
Exactly. And I mean, the team wouldn't want me to use this as an excuse, and I'm not trying to, but it's just the reality. Of course, I'm harsh on the Avalanche for certain things because I know that there's another gear, another level that they can take their play to. Because, I mean, fuck, your third line should be your fourth line right now. The Avalanche should have one of the best third and fourth lines in the league if this team could ever get healthy. It is, I've said it 1,000 times. I will say it 1,000 more because it's true. It is unbelievable how unlucky the Avalanche have been with injuries. And the fact that they have still been able to compete, win games, they're halfway to 50 wins this season and could still very much accomplish that is remarkable. So I do genuinely believe if this Avalanche team just gets healthy, they are a fucking threat to 31 other teams' continued existence in the league.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But,
this team, the amount of games they've won, they surged up the board. Like you said, they're decently secure in a playoff spot right now. And they've done that all in spite of the injuries, and they did it like we said and got there into the playoffs right around Christmas time. So
yep.
If they can finally get fully healthy and continue that upward trajectory, the sky's the limit.
So, yeah. I mean, so you can just, even if you're not a homer like me, you can be somewhat forgiving for certain Avalanche performances, because it's like, what do? You constantly have a rotation of people coming in and out of the lineup. But that just shows you why some of the best players in the world are on the Avalanche, because they're able to adapt and overcome regardless of what the situation is. So it just shows you that high skill level. But that's all I really have to say on that. We have some time. I have a couple quick things from around the league. One, I just wanted to say, it came to my attention today that California is once again on fire.
Oh, yeah, I have the same thing written down here.
Very good. Then we can talk about it now. I heard that the Palisades is on fire. Of course, the Kings and Calgary game was postponed tonight. So our heart goes out to those who are affected by the fire right now. It is always just a tragedy to see it unfold and watch neighborhoods, homes, lives be uprooted, sometimes taken by the wrath of Mother Nature and sometimes by the foolishness of human beings who start these fires. So it is truly a tragedy.
It is an absolute tragedy, and the real thing right now is the hurricane force winds that are causing these blazes to grow. There are currently 3 active fires in California in the LA area, and they are massive. The Palisades one is the most well known. It is the biggest one, and it is right where a lot of the rich of Hollywood live, so that gets a lot of media time. But there are 2 other fires, and it is really all around LA. We have stuff to the north and to the east. So yeah, as you mentioned, our hearts do go out to all the people of the LA area because it is dangerous. There's a lot of smoke in the air. There is a lot of ash, and you can see embers actually being blown in videos. So it's incredibly dangerous out there, and a lot of people have had to flee their homes, and a couple people have passed away. And so we send our condolences to them and their families. And we here also, I would like to say we do salute all of the first responders. There are first responders from
yes,
a
absolutely.
federal, state, from neighboring states, and from local levels, from up north, way north in California, who are making the trek down. And so a lot of people are rallying together, trying to push back against these fires. I've seen plenty of videos myself of just locals, neighbors, going and defending each other's houses while their own houses are on fire, and just trying to stop the blaze and come together for the good of humanity, and choose places to make a stand and just not let the fire pass. And some of those civilians have been successful in their efforts. So just salute those civilian heroes as well, who continue to be brave out there and try to help their fellow man. And it's really heartwarming to see in the middle of a tragedy and what has been, I've seen dubbed on at least one occasion, a fire cane. It's very similar to a hurricane, but with all the embers blowing in the wind, it's causing other spin-off little small fires that connect eventually.
Yes. So thank you for pointing those out, Dom. It's very important for people to recognize what's going on. And it's just one of those things that's bigger than hockey. Well, on a more positive note, there is a player who I'd like to bring attention to. His name is Ozzy. Oh, God. Let me see if I can say his last name right.
Weisblatt.
Yeah, Weisblatt. Thank you. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
okay.
We drafted him.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, we drafted him 31. He was the last to play, I think, from that class.
Okay, well, Ozzy Weisblatt made his debut for the Predators. And for those who don't know, I actually didn't know this part. He made his introduction in ASL, and ASL was actually Ozzy Weisblatt's first language. Why? It is because Ozzy Weisblatt's mother is actually deaf. She worked multiple jobs to raise Ozzy and his 4 siblings, giving them everything to support their dreams. This comes from Chris Mason, by the way, on X. And last night, she was at the front of the glass. Ozzy tossed her a puck, and people need to understand just how much more that means to that family. It's not just a mom getting a puck from her son. This is somebody who sacrificed everything for her son to chase the ultimate dream, and it's a reality. So it's just a really heartwarming moment to see. You are super, super happy for both Ozzy and his family. So that was just super cool.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to see he's finally getting his start after being traded, because he was not really it's nice to have a deep prospect pool in San Jose, but he was not really having much opportunity to get a chance to come up to the NHL level. So I'm glad he's finally had that opportunity. And yeah, like I mentioned, I believe he is the final member of that first round from his draft class all the way back in 2016 to play his first NHL game. So long overdue. It
says here that Weisblatt was picked 20th overall by the San Jose Sharks in the 2020 NHL draft.
2020. Geez, I have all the numbers wrong.
But it says here he has 14 points, 7 goals, 7 assists in 27 games with the Admirals this season. So good for you, Ozzy. Hope for a lot of success, even though you're on the shitty ass Predators. So good for you, brother. Alrighty, Dom. Any other news?
I have a
a
couple other things. So quick one here. I always promise to check in on the Blue Jackets, who currently sit in that last Eastern wildcard spot as we speak to this evening. But they managed to finally win a game on the road against the Penguins on Tuesday. Why it's important is it is their first win in Pittsburgh since 2015, ending a 15-game losing streak in Steel Town that is in the NHL record books.
That's insane! 2015?
That is the first time they have won on the road in Pittsburgh, breaking a 15-game losing streak.
Wow.
Yep. So that one came across my radar. Way to go, Blue Jackets. And like I said at the start of the year, putting together a respectable season in response to tragedy. And also, I mean, obviously the tragedy of the loss of Gaudreau, but also of his minutes. He was one of their better players, in my opinion. So the fact that the team has the mental fortitude to step up to that, but also the talent or the will just to win through the lack of talent on their roster has been quite impressive.
I'm sorry. Well, first of all, Kirill Marchenko has really stepped up, and a lot of their younger kids have really stepped up. I'm sorry to interject negativity here, and it doesn't have to necessarily be negative, but we need to be angry about this. The person who killed Johnny and his brother has pleaded not guilty, and he can go fuck himself in every possible way. I just needed to say that. How fucking dare you? How dare you? Oh, I won't perseverate, but it gets me heated to even see that he has the gall to fucking sit there and do that shit. But positively, I'm so glad along right beside you that the Blue Jackets have been able to have a really great season. Zach Werenski has also really stepped up this season, finally being healthy himself. He's had a fucking really good year.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, can we just pause a second and say how many times you've said perseverate? I think it's
the word of the day today for sure.
It's the word of the day every Wednesday now, but yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's a good word to use many a time. Other news came across. The NHL will be continuing their stadium series next season with hockey outside. Corey, do you know where one of those games is going to be played, or any of those games are going to be played?
I know where the next stadium series and Winter Classic is going to be.
Well,
interesting choices for sure.
Yeah, and well, for those who don't know, hockey is in fact in Florida, and we talked about it, I think, at one point, that Florida's made it to the last 5 Stanley Cup Finals. A team from Florida has, that is, between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. But NHL will be playing hockey outside in Florida twice next season.
They'll be playing in a puddle.
Yeah, the recent success in the playoffs definitely has led to an intense growth of hockey fandom in the state, within the Sunshine State. And so, yeah, each of the Lightning and Panthers will host one of the outdoor games next year.
At least the matchups are halfway decent. Like, the Lightning are playing the Bruins for their outdoor stadium series game. Like, that's good.
Oh, an original 6 match like that? Amazing.
It's an original 6 match? I mean, I know the Bruins are original 6, the Lightning are.
I'm pretty sure the Lightning moved maybe from an original 6 and then a re-expansion went back in for one of them. I'm trying to think.
I don't
Maybe
know.
It's not an original 6, but they play like an original 6 team sometimes.
Either way, and I mean, you got the Panthers versus the New York Rangers for the Winter Classic.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. Are the Rangers an original 6 team?
The Rangers are an original 6 team.
That's what I messed up. That's where the confusion came in.
And it's
okay.
like,
my bad.
I think the issue has been of recently is that, like, the Winter Classic has been between, like, booty ass teams, and you're just like, okay, like, I don't really want to watch this because these teams are kind of sucky. And I hope New York kind of figures it out, because that could make for a really good Winter Classic. Why is the Winter Classic on the 2nd, though? Like, this year it was on New Year's Eve at like 3 p.m. And then now it's not on New Year's Day again. Like, that was always my favorite part of New Year's Day. Like, I know some people could give a shit, but I did. I liked the Winter Classic, and I liked when it was on New Year's Day. I could wake up, watch a New Year's Day game. Like, it was always awesome. And for some reason, the league is just stupid. Yay! What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know about you, man, but I don't love parades unless their Stanley Cup is involved. So fuck the Macy's Day Parade and all that nonsense and whatever parades they have on New Year's Day, and give me some more hockey.
Seriously.
The final topic I have a tiny bit more notes, but I'll go through it quickly here because I really enjoyed getting this piece together.
Yeah.
What came across my phone, not across my desk, but, you know, we'd be doing the searching on the Google. And NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman actually met recently with a...
Sorry.
He met via Zoom recently with recently elected Arizona politician Tom Galvin, like I said, via Zoom, to discuss the potential for hockey to return to the Phoenix area. Now, I wanted to talk about this because we've mentioned how Utah is this new franchise. We talked about how Vegas and Seattle have come in and how they've won very recently, and they're newer franchises as expansion franchises. And so I wanted to, for our audience, I wanted to explain that for an expansion franchise to be granted, the league, first and foremost, not only needs the money, the investment involved, and needs a strong ownership group and a business plan, if you will, but they actually need proof of a new arena being built. And so, or to clarify and make this more I guess clear. So I guess clarify is the right word. Anyway, this means the city not only must invest and commit to building a new stadium. No. Ground must be broken. Like, the stadium must be at least partially complete before the NHL will actually consider granting a team to a new market or a city in general. So they have to, first and foremost, either already have an established stadium or have one in works, not just in plan. So there's a lot of money involved here, and that's why a lot of times when teams want new stadiums, they will also, for commissioners who are cheap, Oakland A's owner, and the Raiders, they will move to a new town and get that town to pay for a stadium as part of it. So that's just part of the business side of hockey. But alas, Arizona is trying to figure out what is necessary or get a group together. There's a new coalition on trying to bring back hockey and get a new stadium built in the Phoenix area. However, Arizona is actually not the only place looking for an expansion team right now, and there's talk of the NHL potentially adding not one but two more franchises to bring the league up to 34 total teams within the not-so-distant future. Both Houston and Atlanta, Corey, have actually shown interest in securing a team. And Corey, I know you know hockey history. Do you know which teams have played in Atlanta previously?
The Atlanta Flames and the Atlanta Thrashers.
That is correct. And of course, the Flames we all know are in Calgary. But the Thrashers are the real, in my opinion, or what I always think of as the Atlanta team. They were home, or their home was in Atlanta from 1999 to 2011, including where the best one-punch knockout I've ever seen in hockey from Evander Kane
I know
occurred.
exactly what one you're talking about, too.
Please link it to the video for everyone to watch. Like, you guys just need to see it. It'll take 10 seconds of your time. I promise you it's worth it. The thing is, though, is that while Atlanta has had a team previously, their current stadium is not in any they do not have a hockey stadium that would be sufficient to NHL standards. So they would also be expected to build a new one from scratch. And so that is something that would cost a lot of money. From what I could find online, and this is just, again, rumors, so take it for what it's worth, it does seem like there are multiple potential ownership groups, so multiple potential bidders within the Atlanta area, which would obviously improve their odds of securing a team if there's multiple proposals coming from different parties in that area. So that does improve Atlanta's odds slightly. However, Houston, the final city I've seen that seems to be in the running or has been proposed or has been in as a hypothetical NHL expansion city, Houston is, I would say, the most likely candidate to receive one of those two potential expansion franchises. And why this is actually because of the Houston Rockets owner, billionaire Tillman Fertitta. He has hinted on more than one occasion that he likes the idea of buying an NHL hockey team. And as you mentioned way long ago, Corey, and I knew I would bring it back at some point, it is not uncommon for hockey and basketball teams to share the same arena, including teams such as Colorado, your Avalanche, and Dallas, which would be very close to Houston. Corey, by chance, do you know how many teams in the NHL currently share a stadium with a basketball team?
Oh, I have heard this before. You got me there. I'll take a shot off the top of my head. I think it's like 25.
Currently, there are 10 NHL franchises that share.
Damn, I was way off.
However, if you count up the total number of teams that play in those stadiums, I believe it actually gets close to 25 since multiple LA teams, since the LA basketball teams would share a stadium, so there would be 3 teams in that one building. So I believe if you total up the number of teams across both sports, it gets close to that 25 number. So that might be what you saw. But anyway, considering that Houston is a top 10 very large media market and has close proximity to Dallas, I imagine, and I bet you would agree with this, I guess I want your thoughts on this, Corey, if it would seem like a very great spot for a team in a city that's growing and that's so close to Dallas. There's immediate rivalry implications there. And you have a stadium already built. You have an owner with the money to finance it. Is it just me, or does this seem like an actual legitimate candidate for an expansion?
I mean, there's been talks of it for a long time, and I might be the grouch here that thinks this. And of course, my voice totally matters in the grand scheme of the NHL, but I like it at 32 teams. Apparently, there's not a risk of dilution of talent, but I'm always scared that with more franchises, you have a risk of dilution of talent, and of course, more people to poach the good players. So I like it at 32 teams. I'm kind of content with where we're at personally because it's a nice round number. 16 teams in, 16 teams out. It feels exactly like how it's supposed to be. But of course, money talks, and money is the number one driver of all decisions. So really, I agree. It's probably a great market. Dallas has proven that despite being a non-traditional hockey market, Texas is a place for hockey to be played. I mean, the Dallas fans are fiercely loyal to their franchise, so the marketing potential is massive.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It is definitely a financial driven thing. And while I agree with you about the concern about the dilution of talent, I also think when we talk about the World Juniors and such and how a lot of the world has caught up to Canada and even the US in some sense when it comes to hockey, there's not that same divide there used to be. And so I do think there is maybe a larger pool of talent that would have been previously available or considered. And there's a lot of guys who do spend more or extended stints on AHL's rosters. So my concern is actually I understand we don't want to over dilute, but how do you divide those teams up? I assume you would have one in the West and one in the East, but then the divisions are no longer the same size. So my thing is if they add 2 teams to get to 34, I would think they would have to have it in their plan if they commit to that to get 2 more teams to 36 to bring about balance in an even number again.
All I know is that Quebec is going to be mad as shit because I know that there are no plans to bring a franchise back there.
Yeah.
I support you, Quebec. You deserve the Nordiques back. I support you.
Yeah, that yeah. I'm not gonna try to dive into that one.
Oh, yeah, that's a can of worms. Well, thank you, Dom. Yeah,
But that's all the other news around the league that I went ahead and did some searching for everyone since I had less to talk about, at least from a game notes perspective this week. So I hope that was exciting, interesting, or just something new for everyone to listen to.
It was, and to be honest, I think that is a perfect fun fact for the day. So I think you nailed it there. I think that's a perfect way to round out this episode.
Well, then I pass it back to you for the honors of closing us out. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Well, everyone, the clock is counting down to the final horn. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of the Captain Avalanche Fancast. Did you know there is a comment section where you can leave your thoughts and questions? If you have something you want to know about the Avalanche, Sharks, or just hockey in general, leave it below and we'll be happy to try and answer it. There's also a unique poll for you to interact with every episode. The best thing for you to do, if you like what we're doing here, is to follow us on whatever platform you're using and to share this podcast everywhere you can, whether that's with your mouse or your mouth. I'm Captain Avalanche Corey.
And this is Dom from the Tank.
Check out our new episodes every week. Thanks, everyone.